Let's dive into this deep dive on the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss.
Sounds good.
It's a book that's had a huge impact, and we're going to really try to understand why.
Yeah. It kind of throws out the old rules about work, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about making a bunch of money, but having the freedom to choose, how you spend your time and where.
Yeah, when I first read this book, the idea of mini retirements really blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, wait, you can take these big breaks throughout your life to travel or learn new things or just recharge. It totally changed how I thought about work and leisure.
That's Ferriss's whole new rich idea, right?
Yeah.
People who value experiences and freedom over just piling up money.
Yeah, absolutely. But making such a big change can feel scary.
It can.
Have you ever tried that thing where you define the worst case scenario to deal with fear? Ferriss talks about that.
Oh, yeah. It's surprisingly effective. I used it when I was deciding whether to quit my corporate job and start my own business. Really helped me see that even if things went wrong, it wouldn't be as bad as I was imagining.
Like taking away the power of fear.
Exactly.
Right.
And that connects to Ferriss's point about getting out of your comfort zone. That's where the growth happens.
For sure. So once you've got that mindset shift, he gives a framework for setting goals, and he believes in setting what he calls unrealistic goals.
Unrealistic.
Yeah, which at first sounds kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, his thinking is that even if you miss that crazy ambitious goal, you'll still end up further along than if you set a more realistic but limited one.
I see.
It's like aiming for the stars and maybe landing on the moon. So he suggests you make these 2 timelines, one for 6 months and one for a year. You list 15 things you'd love to have, be, or do if there was no chance of failure.
Like a dream list.
Totally. It's about brainstorming without limiting yourself.
That sounds freeing.
Right. Now think about your list. What excites you? What would make you feel truly accomplished? And then out of those 15, he has you choose the 4 most important on each timeline.
The most important.
Yeah. So you focus your energy on what truly matters. Then he gets into turning those goals into action, breaking them down, figuring out what resources you need, and taking those first steps, even if they seem small.
The first steps, yeah.
So important. It's easy to get stuck planning, but sometimes you just got to start, even if it's imperfect.
So true.
What's a small step you could take today towards one of your big goals?
Ooh, good question.
And once you're moving, Ferriss dives into time management hacks to make the most of your time, like the 80-20 rule, Pareto's law.
Oh, yeah, everyone's heard of that.
But are you actually using it? Think about your week. Which 20% of your tasks produce 80% of your results? Can you focus more on those and maybe delegate or eliminate the rest?
That's a good point. Not all tasks are created equal.
Exactly. And then there's Parkinson's law, which says that work expands to fill the time we give it.
Oh, I'm definitely guilty of that.
Me too. But Ferriss' solution is simple. Set deadlines. By setting time limits, we force ourselves to be more focused.
Deadlines, yeah.
He also suggests making a not-to-do list, things you're consciously avoiding that just waste time and don't help your goals.
A not-to-do list. I like that.
Right, like giving yourself permission to say no.
What would be on your not-to-do list?
Good question. For me, it would definitely include endlessly scrolling through social media first thing in the morning. I'd rather focus on those high-impact tasks. It sets a better tone for the day.
Oh, that's a good one.
And speaking of being mindful of how we use our time, Ferriss talks about information overload. He calls it the low information diet, being intentional about what we let into our minds.
Makes sense in today's world, right?
Totally. With the constant news and emails and social media updates, it's easy to get overwhelmed and distracted.
Yeah. So how do we actually do this low information diet?
Well, he suggests things like limiting news, unsubscribing from unnecessary emails, and being mindful of social media time.
So being selective.
Exactly. It's not about cutting yourself off completely,
Yeah.
but choosing carefully, focusing on information that truly matters to you. Imagine you're at a buffet. You wouldn't pile your plate with everything, right?
Right.
You'd choose the dishes that look most appealing and nutritious. It's the same with information. We need to be picky and choose what nourishes our minds and helps us reach our goals.
That's a great analogy.
Now, this brings us to one of the most interesting and maybe controversial parts of the 4-Hour Workweek, the idea of building a muse.
A muse.
Yeah, it's essentially a business that generates income passively, freeing up your time to pursue other things, the heart of the 4-Hour Workweek dream.
Okay, that sounds interesting. So how do you build one of these muse things?
Ferriss lays out a blueprint, breaking it down into 4 steps. First is finding a niche market, a specific group of people with a need you can meet. It's about finding your sweet spot, not trying to be everything to everyone.
Finding your niche.
Right. And then you got to figure out what product or service to offer, what fits this Muse model.
So what makes a good product?
He suggests products with a decent price that are relatively easy to produce or develop and have a good profit margin. He gives examples in the book and even compares making your own product versus reselling or licensing existing ones.
Huh. So there are options.
Yeah, depending on your skills and what you're into. But finding your niche and product is just the start.
So what are the next steps?
Well, once you have a product, you need to get it to your customers. That's step 3, setting up a distribution channel.
Ah, okay.
Online marketplaces, direct sales websites, partnering with retailers. It's about finding the best way to reach your audience. And the final step is testing and refining what you offer.
Testing and refining.
It's crucial. He emphasizes getting real feedback from customers and making adjustments based on what you learn. Testing different marketing, pricing, and improving your product or service over time.
So it's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. It's not about having a perfect product right away. It's about launching, learning, and improving based on what you see happening.
I see. So once you have a profitable Muse running, what then?
Then it's all about systematizing and automating. This is where the 4-hour workweek really comes into play.
Okay.
It's about delegating tasks, outsourcing things, and creating systems so the business can run smoothly with minimal input from you.
Minimizing your involvement.
Exactly. He talks a lot about virtual assistants and how they can help automate different parts of your business.
Virtual assistants.
From customer service to marketing to admin tasks. It's about freeing up your time for things that truly matter to you.
Makes sense.
Spending time with family, working on a passion project, just enjoying downtime.
So how do you actually escape the 9 to 5? Not everyone can just up and quit their job.
Right. He offers strategies for gradually transitioning, like negotiating remote work with your current employer.
Remote work.
He gives tips on making a case for working from home, highlighting the benefits for both you and the company.
That's become much more common these days.
Definitely. And once you've shown you can be productive remotely, it might open up possibilities for a more flexible schedule.
Ah, I see.
Maybe even becoming fully remote.
Interesting.
Another strategy is taking strategic time off, not just a random vacation.
Okay.
It's about planning a longer break, showing you can be productive outside the office, like a trial run for a freer lifestyle.
Like a test.
Yeah, it shows your employer you can get things done even when you're not physically there.
Makes them more open to the idea.
Exactly. But ultimately, many people want to quit their job entirely and focus on their Muse full time.
A dream.
But he says you got to quit strategically, not just jump ship on impulse.
Makes sense.
It's about having a solid financial plan, a Muse making consistent income, and a vision for what you'll do with your freedom.
You have to be prepared.
Right. And let's be real, quitting your job can be an emotional roller coaster.
It can.
Fear, excitement, uncertainty, all of it. Ferriss knows this and even offers exercises for dealing with those emotions. It's about preparing yourself mentally and emotionally for the change to a more unconventional lifestyle. But once you've escaped the 9 to 5 and you've got all this freedom, what do you actually do with it? What does life beyond the traditional work week look like?
That's the big question, isn't it?
We'll explore that more in the next part of our deep dive. But
Right.
For now, think about this. What would you do if you had more freedom? What passions would you chase? What experiences would you seek out? Really envision that freedom. What does it feel like? What becomes possible when you're not bound by a traditional work week?
That's a lot to think about.
Welcome back. Just thinking about all those possibilities is pretty exciting. But before we get too carried away with dreams of mini retirements and businesses, it's important to acknowledge that the 4-hour work week has also had its share of criticism.
Yeah, for sure. Not everyone's going to love the idea of minimizing work as much as Ferriss does. Some people find real meaning and purpose in their careers, and they might feel like escaping work completely would actually make them less fulfilled.
That's a good point. The 4-hour work week isn't a one-size-fits-all prescription.
Definitely not.
It's more of a way to think differently about work. Designing a lifestyle that matches what you value and what you want.
Exactly. And even if you do dream of ditching the 9 to 5, building a successful Muse business is no easy feat.
It's not a magic bullet.
It takes a lot of work up front, being okay with some risk, and having certain skills that not everyone has.
True. Ferriss acknowledges the challenges, but he does tend to focus on the success stories, which can make it all seem a bit too easy.
Yeah, I see that. Plus, the business world has changed a lot since the book came out.
It has.
Some of those tactics might not work as well now, especially online.
So while the big ideas are still relevant, finding your niche, making something valuable, automating things, the specific strategies might need tweaking.
Right. Another thing people point out is that Ferriss's approach can be a bit, well, individualistic, focused on personal freedom and achievement without thinking much about social impact.
That's true. He doesn't really dive into things like social responsibility or ethical business practices.
Yeah.
Although he does encourage readers to use their freedom to give back to their community and make a difference.
Right.
Ultimately, it's up to each person to decide how they use their time and resources.
For sure.
The key is to be aware of the consequences of our choices and try to balance personal fulfillment with contributing to something bigger than ourselves.
Well said. So the 4-hour work week might not be perfect for everyone. But it does offer a valuable way to rethink our relationship with work.
Yeah.
And design a lifestyle that matches our values and what we want. It pushes us to question things, challenge the usual way of doing things, and explore other paths to success and fulfillment.
Even if we don't all get that 4-hour work week, the ideas of being intentional, efficient, and free can apply to any part of our lives.
Absolutely. Whether you're trying to improve your career, start a side hustle, or just make more room for things you love.
There are so many great tools and insights in this book that can help us on that journey.
One that really stood out to me was his advice on dealing with information overload, the low information diet.
Yeah, being super selective about what we let into our minds.
It's so easy to get sucked into the constant news, social media, emails.
It's overwhelming.
It really is. Our brains are overloaded trying to process everything.
Like Ferriss says, a lot of that information is just noise.
Noise.
It doesn't help us reach our goals. It just drains our energy and keeps us from focusing on what matters.
So how do we put ourselves on this diet?
He recommends being deliberate about what news we consume. Instead of passively scrolling through headlines, choose a few trusted sources that align with your interests.
Makes sense.
Unsubscribe from unnecessary emails and be mindful of a social media time.
Practical steps.
I found that setting specific time limits for social media really helps.
Oh, me too.
It's so easy to get lost down that rabbit hole.
You lose track of time.
But this isn't about cutting ourselves off from the world.
No.
It's about making conscious choices about what we consume and making sure it actually benefits us.
That's a good point. Another powerful concept is defining the worst-case scenario.
Oh yeah, to overcome fear and procrastination.
I found that super helpful.
When we face a tough decision or challenge, our fear makes those negative outcomes seem huge. But when we force ourselves to actually define the worst case, often it's not nearly as bad as we imagined.
Right.
And once we've done that, we can make a plan to deal with those risks.
It takes away the power of the fear.
Exactly. We can move forward with more confidence.
Ferriss also talks about embracing discomfort, stepping outside our comfort zones.
Yeah.
He says real growth happens when we challenge ourselves and push our boundaries.
Think about a time you took a leap of faith. Maybe starting a new project or learning a new skill.
Yeah.
Even having a difficult conversation. Those uncomfortable moments can lead to the most rewarding experiences.
They can.
And while it's scary to step outside our comfort zones, it's often in those vulnerable moments that we discover what we're truly capable of.
So besides the new rich philosophy, the muse business, and escaping the 9-to-5, the 4-hour work week has a lot to offer for personal growth, facing our fears, and living a more fulfilling life.
But it's important to remember there's no single answer for everyone.
Yeah.
What works for one person might not work for another.
We have to adapt these ideas to our own lives and goals.
Absolutely. And the journey to a more fulfilling life isn't always a straight line.
True.
There will be setbacks and challenges and times when we doubt ourselves.
It's part of the process.
We might try different approaches and find that some work better than others. The important thing is to keep learning, keep adapting, and keep moving forward.
It's the journey that matters.
The goal isn't just to work less, but to make work something we enjoy and find purpose in, not just a burden. It's about finding that balance that lets us chase our passions, spend time with people we care about, give back to our community, and live a life that feels meaningful and true to ourselves.
Before we wrap up, I wanted to mention a few extra resources for those who want to dig deeper.
Okay, like what?
Ferriss himself recommends his blog. He shares articles, interviews, and updates on his projects.
His blog is full of information on everything from productivity and business to health, wellness, and personal growth.
This is a great resource. His podcast, The Tim Ferriss Show, is fantastic too.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
He interviews amazing people from all kinds of fields, business, sports, entertainment, the arts. His interviews are always insightful. He asks great questions and really gets into the guests' mindset, their routines, and how they achieve success.
And for those who want a more structured way to put these ideas into practice, there are online courses and communities dedicated to helping people design their ideal lifestyle.
These communities offer support and encouragement.
You don't have to go it alone.
It's nice to have that camaraderie.
As we come to the end of this part of our deep dive, here are some questions to think about. What parts of Ferriss's approach really resonated with you? What challenges do you think you'll face trying to implement these ideas? What are some things you can start doing today to move towards a life with more freedom and fulfillment?
Really reflect on these questions and see how you can apply the 4-hour work week to your own life.
Make it your own.
In the final part, we'll be discussing some of the broader implications of Ferriss's work and what the future of work might look like in a world where technology keeps changing how we live and earn a living.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into the 4-hour work week. We've really dug into Ferriss's ideas, the good and the bad, and how they might apply to us.
Yeah, it's been interesting thinking about those ideas and unpacking how they might fit into our own lives.
But now I want to zoom out a bit. What does this book, even with its flaws and how the world's changed, tell us about the future of work? Because things are definitely changing fast.
Totally. When Ferriss was writing about remote work, automation, and this whole lifestyle design thing back in 2007, it was almost like he was predicting the future.
Yeah.
He saw this growing need for more flexibility and control in our work, and that need's only gotten stronger.
Think about the gig economy. Remote work becoming normal and all the crazy advances in technology is like the old rules of work are disappearing and there are all these new possibilities.
Right. It's exciting, but kind of scary too, right? This chance to completely reinvent work. But how do we handle all this change?
Exactly. How do we feel secure and stable when everything feels so unpredictable?
And how do we avoid constantly hustling, even when we're supposed to be free, to set our own hours? It's like we need a new set of rules, a new way to figure things out.
And that's where I think the 4-hour work week is still relevant. It's not so much a step-by-step guide, but more like a change in how we think. It encourages us to question everything, experiment, and realize we might have more control over our work than we thought.
About taking charge.
Of our careers, our time, and basically our lives. That message is powerful, regardless of what tactics or technology we use to get there.
You know, one thing that struck me when we were talking about the criticisms is that the book sometimes makes work seem really simple. Like everyone hates their job and just wants to escape. But that's not always true.
Right. Work can be more than just a paycheck for some people.
It can be.
It's part of who they are. It gives them purpose. It connects them to others. And this idea of shrinking work down, as much as Ferriss suggests, well, that might not work for everyone.
The important thing is to be thoughtful about how you relate to work.
Right.
What do you want from it? How does it fit into your whole life? And can you structure it in a way that aligns with your values and what you want to achieve?
That's a great point. I also think it's important to realize that finding freedom and fulfillment in our work is a process.
It's not like you just arrive one day.
Yeah, it's not a destination. It's a journey of always exploring and growing.
What worked before might not work now.
And what we consider success will probably change as we change.
Right. So instead of looking for a single answer or solution, maybe the biggest takeaway from the 4-hour work week is that we should keep asking questions, keep trying new things, and keep shaping our work life to fit who we are and what we need.
It's about embracing the journey, all the ups and downs, and remembering that the ultimate goal isn't just working less, it's living more fully.
That's a great way to put it.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the 4-hour work week, we want to thank you for joining us. We hope you've learned something, had some new ideas sparked, and maybe even feel inspired to rethink your own relationship with work and life.
Remember, the future of work isn't something happening to us. We're the ones creating it.
Yeah.
So go out there, try new things, challenge the way things are usually done, and build a work life that brings you joy, purpose, and maybe even some freedom.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep searching for those moments that make life so rewarding. Thanks for joining us.